And happy Saturday. Happy Saturday. We have a big preview show here. If you want to get some money this weekend, you're tuned in to the right place because not only is this Sucker Punch, not only is it Sucker Punch Saturday, it is a special edition of Beating the Odds with Beeb. Let's go. And here we are, my main man, my brother from another, up there in Boston. Joe Habib is ready to give you the big insights for this weekend's big fight taking place in the UK. It is Jack Catterall, a top contender at 140 pounds. A lot of people, Joe, think that he's actually uncrowned undisputed champion because they still believe that he beat Josh Taylor that first time and should have been crowned the undisputed slash lineal um, champion of the world, but he lost that night. I actually thought he lost that night, but I know people don't think that's a little controversial. But here we are. He's bouncing back. He's been on the rebound. It's been string after string of wins for Catterall since that defeat, and now after defeating Regis Prograis in his last fight, he's now taking on top contender out of the great state of California, Arnold Barboza Jr. So go for it, Joe. Talk to us about this fight. You excited about it? How you feeling about it? You're gonna be watching it live, and who you got winning? And what do you think are the best odds if you're gonna put some money down on this fight? How would you do it, Joe? Go for it. You're on mute.
Let's open up with the money line here because Jack Catterall is a minus 255. Barboza is a plus 200. And we're always looking for value. We don't like to have to give up odds when we make a play here. Even though I'm confident Jack Catterall will win this fight, I still want to give you guys the best value and obviously myself the best value when I'm making this play. So I love the prop bets, right? Whenever you have a fight like this and you really want to get creative and you want to maximize and minimize your loss and maximize your winning, because nothing's a sure thing, but we always want to look at both sides of the coin. But with that being said, I like Jack Catterall in this fight really big, and I think it's a no-brainer that this fight goes the distance. Now, if you bet Jack Catterall by decision or technical decision, you get a minus 140. But I'm going to even take it one step further and get even more creative with you because on DraftKings, they have what's called an exact winning method. And if you bet Jack Catterall to win by unanimous decision, you'll actually get a minus 110. And that pretty much is telling you that it's pretty close to a even money fight for yourself there. You put up 110 and you win 100. So you're not really losing much, right? So you put up 110, so you make $90, right? Instead of putting up the 140 and getting the 100 back, so you're getting a bit more here. So I do think it's low risk to pick Jack Catterall by unanimous decision. The only thing that could ruin your bet for you is if there's a cut and then it goes to the scorecards, or if it's a majority decision, or if it's a split decision. Then obviously you lose the bet. But Jack Catterall, you don't see him get cut too much in fights. You don't see a lot of headbutt issues with Jack Catterall. He's more of an outboxer. Both of these guys are outboxers. So I'm not really anticipating any cuts, right? Or any unforeseen incidences where this fight could be stopped due to cuts, right? So that's why, given the two styles of these two fighters, uh, neither one of them are huge punchers, although I do think Jack Catterall has a bit more pop than Barboza. He's a bit more sharper as well. I do think this is a distance fight, and I do think because this fight is going to be in Great Britain, UK, I think you won't have any surprises with the scorecards here because if Jack Catterall does win this fight legitimately and it is a clear, concise decision, I don't think you'll have any funny business with the scorecards here, in my opinion. So I do like betting Jack Catterall to win by exact unanimous decision here, and that's the play I'm recommending. But let me explain why I like Jack Catterall in this fight, because as I mentioned, these two guys do have similarities. They're very similar in size, although Barboza is listed at 5'9" and Catterall's listed at 5'7". They both look to me to be almost pretty much the same height at the weigh-in when they did the face-off. So both guys do like to fight at a distance. They like space. They're outboxers. I think Jack Catterall can fight in the mid range a little bit as well. But the thing is this: I do think Jack Catterall is the more refined of the two. I think he's a bit quicker. I think he's a bit more crafty. He's more creative with his offense. He knows how to create those openings with feints, right? And he knows how to like give you those level changes. And when he dips down, he makes his opponent guess like, what's he gonna do when he pops? Is he gonna stay down there and throw a body shot, jab to the body, or is he gonna pop up and is he gonna throw the jab to the head, or come up top and throw a quick 1-2? So he's a little bit more unpredictable, whereas Barboza is the outboxer. He's more of a little bit more of the volume guy. He'll throw more punches, but just because you throw more punches, this isn't a punch throwing contest. This is a punch landing contest. And I think even though Catterall may not be as busy as Barboza, right? He's a bit sharper and more accurate, and he's more cagey and he's more crafty and tricky getting off the offense. He has a tendency to have a higher accuracy rate than Barboza, whereas Barboza likes to fight in spurts too, but he throws quick flurries. And a lot of those flurries don't always, a lot of those punches in those flurries don't always hit the mark. It's like he throws a plate of spaghetti up against the wall, hoping like something sticks there. Whereas I think Catterall is more of a sharpshooter, and I think also that he can get Barboza's attention a little bit more than Barboza can get his attention, because you see Barboza again not really land clean shots, look sloppy sometimes in fights where the punches are grazing, they're not really landing flush, and sometimes he can become predictable, whereas Catterall always keeps his opponent guessing. So that's why I like Catterall here. I just think he's a bit quicker. I think he'll get off first. He's a bit sharper, and I think that he'll be landing the cleaner, more significant blows here, even though Barboza may be the busier of the two. I think Catterall will be the more accurate of the two, and he'll land the more decisive blows, in my opinion.
I agree with you, and I want to chime in a little bit here as well, Joe. I see, in addition to what you're saying, I also have to add in the fact that I don't really think that Arnold Barboza, in addition to not being as sharp, as accurate as Jack Catterall, I don't think he's gonna have I don't think he has, I should say, the punching power to end this fight or to really trouble Jack Catterall. And I'll tell you why. He has not won by knockout since 2019 against the unheralded William Silva. That was his last knockout win. Following that, he went the distance with Tony Lewis. Okay. Uh, he went the distance with Alex Salcedo. He went the distance with Antonio Moran. He went the distance with Danielito Zoria. He went the distance with Jose Pedraza, a guy who's been stopped multiple times by multiple guys. He went the distance with Jolisani Nongeni. He went the distance at a fight I was at live at the Barclays Center. It was on the undercard of Devin Haney versus Ryan Garcia. He went the distance with Sean McComb, an Irish fighter who I actually thought beat him. Following that, he went the distance with Juan Carlos Ramirez. Jose Carlos Ramirez, I should say. I've got a student named Juan Carlos, my fault. And now he's taking on Jack Catterall. And here's the thing: Jack Catterall has faced bigger punchers, Joe. Jack Catterall has faced Josh Taylor. Jack Catterall has faced Regis Prograis. And in addition, like you said, Joe, stylistically, tactically, I give the advantages to Catterall. I just don't see uh, Barboza really being able to get in there and knock Catterall out, which I think he'd need to do to win this fight. Because if you're not winning it on volume, because you're not landing, you're not winning it on accuracy, right? I just don't see him being able to really set up a knockout and win on the cards. Oh, sorry, and win by knockout over there in England. And I think he's going to get outboxed and lose by unanimous decision. Joe, go for it.
Yeah, and I wouldn't even be surprised too if Catterall scored a knockdown or two in this fight, because even though he's not a huge puncher, he's a sharp puncher, and because he has that surprise element to his shots, and because he lands so cleanly, he'll knock guys down. And you know, he knocked Prograis down a few times. He knocked Josh Taylor down. So he can score a quick flash knockdown. And then you say to yourself, well, Beeb, if he's the sharper guy, he hits harder, then aren't you concerned that he may stop Barboza? Well, again, he is sort of a safety first type fighter too. So he doesn't always even when he scores a knockdown, he doesn't just jump on a guy and throw all caution into the wind. He's still methodical. He still likes to be safety first, and he has no problem just coasting in a fight and winning a fight by decision, right? And in certain fights, he does slow down late, but against Prograis, he was pretty consistent, like throughout. He didn't really slow down. There was no dip, in his intensity in that fight. Because sometimes later in the fight, you'll see that he, like I said before, he just coasts and he doesn't always apply the pressure. And you think that after he hurts a guy that he could probably get him out of there and finish him, but he just doesn't have that mentality where he's a kill or be killed type guy. He's content on getting the decision, and his thought process, in my opinion, just by looking at him is, if I can win without having to really expose myself to danger, then I'm going to do that. And I think that's how he's going to approach this fight, because again, after this fight, he's got to be in line for a title shot. And like I said, he doesn't want to put himself at risk and take any unnecessary chances when he knows he can win this fight by outboxing Barboza easily, in my opinion. So that's how I think he's going to approach this fight, and that's how I think this fight's going to play out. I think this is going to be somewhat of a wide decision. I could see this being like a 9-3 type fight, in my opinion. And like I said, I do think, because it is in the UK, I don't think you're going to have any funny business with the scorecards. You're not going to have one of those mysterious draws, or maybe even Barboza being up on one of the cards. I don't think that's going to happen in this fight. I just don't see it. I think that Catterall is going to just be landing so cleanly, and so he's going to just win so clear and concisely, where they can't really even make this fight close by funny business on the cards.
Yeah, and some of Barboza's kind of more underwhelming performances. And by the way, I actually like Arnold Barboza and have respect for his team and what they've done. But he couldn't get the fight that he was chasing when he was with Top Rank, right? Because he went over to Golden Boy. The fight he wanted was Teofimo Lopez. That's what they were focused on. That's the head that they were looking to get. And they couldn't get that fight. Teofimo didn't want anything to do with it. There's a infamous video, Joe. I'm sure you saw it, where they kind of caught up with Teofimo and his dad on the casino floor out there in Vegas, and were pressing them. And Teofimo kind of walked away and left his dad there to kind of handle the situation by himself, if memory serves me well. And that's what they were focused on. And if you listen to members of his team, that they weren't really motivated for a lot of these fights, like the Sean McComb fight, the Irish guy that I thought beat him. But at a certain point, if you're at a certain level, you still need to get rid of these guys and be impressive. And I'm sorry, as much as I like Arnold Barboza, I just haven't been very impressed
Yeah.
by this string of victories that he's put together. Uh, I mean, I just haven't been impressed really by the performances in any of these fights. The work isn't as accurate as Catterall. It's much more predictable than Catterall. Oftentimes, you watch a Barboza fight; it's like the same thing over and over again in every single round. You don't see the adjustments being made. You kind of
Yeah.
see them just like going through the gears on their way to a victory. I see all the dynamic advantages going towards Catterall in this fight. And I'm just going to say it. I think he's the harder puncher, Joe.
He is.
I really do. It's not, I think, in addition to being accurate, more accurate, in addition to the use of the feints, in addition to the way that he fights at angles, and again, is more dynamic, I also think he's a bigger puncher. Joe, go for it.
Yeah, and I got to give Barboza credit here because he is ranked number one by the WBO. Catterall's ranked number two, and this is for the WBO interim junior welterweight title. Why again? I can't stand these interim titles, and the WBO's usually been better than the other ones by having these meaningless titles and these meaningless interim title fights. So I don't know why there's an interim. There's an interim title fight here, and why there needs to be an interim champion. But him being ranked number one, Barboza, you know, even though this will be for an interim title, he still could have waited it out for the real title, right? Because he was ranked number one. He could have fought a couple soft touches. Now, I don't know if he's been promised by the WBO commissioner, the head of the WBO.
The new one, it used to be Paco Varcasel, and
Yeah, it's
for
not
the
him
life of
anymore.
me, I can't remember the name of the
I can't
new
remember
guy.
the new guy's name.
He's a
So
lawyer from Florida.
I don't know if winning this interim title gets him closer to the real title or if he was promised anything. And I'm sure he's getting paid good money because he's going over to the UK in Catterall's backyard. So I'm sure they had to pay him to do that. But again, this is a tough fight, right? This is a high risk fight. I don't know the reward. He will be if he is able to pull off the upset, he will be the interim champion for whatever that's worth. But again, could he have sat on his number one ranking and waited it out to become the mandatory? I don't know, but I got to give him credit. This is a tough fight for him. I'm sure there were easier fights he could have taken to keep himself busy to protect his ranking, but he ended up taking this chance. And this is a good fight for Jack Catterall too, because the winner of this fight you would think would get a winner at Teofimo Lopez, but that's up to the WBO on how they want to proceed with this and if they want to enforce a mandatory. And I don't know when Teofimo Lopez is due for a mandatory, but the winner of this fight, I would.
Fast approaching. Apparently, both Teofimo Lopez, who has a mandatory due very soon under the WBO, and Richardson Hitchens also has a mandatory due under the IBF. The idea was, well, I mean, people have been talking about this for them to try to unify before the mandatories are called, but
Yeah,
they've just been stalling with that, Joe. I mean, that's the natural fight to make. Hitchens from New York, Teofimo,
I think they're
uh,
going to make that. I think
born
that
in
fight's going to
Brooklyn.
get done. Yeah, I think
Hitchens
that fight's going to get
still
done.
trains in Brooklyn at Cops and Kids with my guy Coach Sosa down there. So sorry, not Coach Sosa, but trains at Cops and Kids. I don't know why the fight hasn't happened yet, but that is one of the additional reasons, Joe, to answer your question earlier, why this interim title is on the line, because for whatever reason, the WBO is allowing Teofimo Lopez to drag his feet here while keeping his title.
Yeah, I guess one thing about the WBO, what they're good about too, is when a fighter is in negotiation to unify with another champion, they tend to give him a little bit of slack and cut him some grace. So maybe they're saying to themselves, okay, we'll let you do this unification, then we'll order the mandatory. So if they're not prepared to order the mandatory right away, then that's their justification for having the interim champion while they're waiting to order the mandatory, whatever. But again, to me, it just seems like a lot of nonsense with these interim titles. You know me, I'm not a big fan of them. I can't stand them. I hate them. I can go through the reasons why they would justify it, but I myself can't justify these things. I mean, you let these two guys fight and just let them fight for the number one spot, right? Let this be an eliminator, or let this be for the mandatory spot. Why does it have to be for an interim title? Why can't it just be for the mandatory slot? So is now the interim title going to be a substitution, or is that going to be represent what the mandatory challenger is supposed to be now? You have to win an interim title now before you become mandatory.
That's honestly what it seems like.
Is this, again, it's more nonsense and ridiculousness in my opinion. So
Number one, it's like a pacifier to the guy that's waiting for his title shot. It's like the baby's in the cradle crying a little bit or in the stroller. So we're gonna pacify the baby with this interim little title that allows him to walk around with a belt, but nobody really ever recognizes interim title holders as real title holders. I mean, so it's like, what are we really doing here? Oh, wait a second. They're probably taking a sanctioning fee, Joe.
yeah, and that's what it is. That's what it is. We hear these sanctioning bodies say they want to eliminate belts, but they continue to do these eliminators, have these commemorative belts. These, I guess, when I interviewed Mauricio Sulman, I asked him about all these commemorative belts, these silver belts, and these gold champions, and these diamond belts, and all these crazy trinkets. He told me they were basically trophies. And then when I asked him, do they pay sanctioning fees for these trophies? I believe he said yes. So I don't know. Whenever I won a trophy, I never had to pay a fee to win that trophy, right? So I don't know.
Well, they say in the school system, Joe, where I obviously work, that we're now in the everyone gets a trophy era,
Yeah,
right? So
that's a big
maybe boxing's adopting a little bit of that too. You sign up for the cross country race, you finish, 50th, out of 60 runners, right? And you get your little trophy, your little participation award, right, Joe?
That's exactly right.
I mean, that's what we're doing in the schools, and I guess that's what we're doing in boxing as well. Let me ask you this before we get into some of the odds breakdowns, and I want to ask you where you think the next uh, fight, what you think the next fight is for the winner of this fight. Like, if you're Catterall, we both think Catterall wins this fight, right? Uh, what's next for him? Does he actually get a shot at Teofimo Lopez? You think that's actually on the cards? Because I'll tell you this, with his style, a guy who can box and move, but with respectable power, right? And with his stance, on top of that, I actually think that he probably beats Teofimo Lopez, but I don't know whether or not he's going to get a shot at the full champion under the WBO. What are your thoughts on that?
I I, I do think Tio is gonna try to unify with Hitchens. I think that's the fight that both those guys want. And I think that's a good money fight because both those guys, I believe, are from the New York area, right? And that would be a pretty good fight in New York, if I'm not mistaken, right? So I think that's the fight next for Tio and Hitchens. Now, again, these guys are going to have the winner of this fight is going to have the interim title. So what do they do? Like, do they start defending the belt, or do they petition the WBO and push the WBO to order the mandatory? Like, who's ever representing Catterall, his manager, what's his name? What is it? Sam Jones, the guy that's his manager. Now, does he? If Catterall wins, does he go out there and put some pressure on the WBO to try to get that mandatory slot? Um, Hopefully, I would think that the winner of Hitchens and Tio would have to have a mandatory at some point with the WBO, right? I would think that they would be next in line because Hitchens just won the IBF belt, so I don't know if he'd have a mandatory scheduled, right? But Tio's been the WBO champion for a while, and I can't remember the last time he actually had a mandatory. If someone can help me in the chat, so I think if Tio were to beat Hitchens, then maybe the WBO would order that mandatory, or even if Hitchens won, maybe I would think that the WBO would order the mandatory and have the winner fight the winner of this fight. That's what I would like to see in a perfect world, and I would think that would happen if I would guess. But then Catterall would have to have a stay busy fight in between while he's waiting for that, and I don't think at that point when he knows he's in line for a title shot would he risk going in there with a tough opponent. I don't think he would fight like a guy like Subaru Matias. Alfredo Santiago is ranked number 3 by the WBO, so that may be a safer fight for him. Or if he were to go, even maybe fight a Jose Ramirez or something. in the interim. That's a decent fight, but it's not incredibly risky for him. I think he would win that fight pretty
Well, I
soundly.
actually have the rankings up here, Joe. We can have a look at them.
Yeah,
This is courtesy of Boxing
yeah. I'm looking at the
Scene.
same rankings right
So
now on my phone.
check out Boxing Scene over here, guys. 140-pound division. All right, the champion there in the WBO is Teofimo Lopez. Right under him is Barboza at number one, Catterall at number two, Alfredo Santiago number three, Subriel Matias number four, and McQuan Williams, who I've seen fight actually, Joe. And McQuan
Yeah.
actually isn't from too far from your neck of the woods. I'm pretty sure he's actually from the great state of Connecticut. Uh,
Okay.
he's a Ludabella fighter who I've seen fight on Broadway boxing shows. Uh, I don't know if he's going to ever get a good shot, but he's actually quite a good fighter. So that's who's there under the WBO. I don't know if you'd want to do a trilogy fight with Josh Taylor. I don't know if that's an option. Maybe he could try to get a fight with Alberto Puello, the WBC champion who's affiliated with the PBC and is probably therefore as a result on the shelf. Rayo Valenzuela, the WBA champion. Um, I don't know if he has a fight lined up soon. So I mean, there are a lot of names here. And the guy that I'm actually quite excited about is the number one guy under the WBA, Andy Hiraoka, out of Japan. His mother's Japanese, his father is African, and he's quite a talented fighter. Andy is. I'd like to see him get a shot at some point. But there you go. Looking at the rankings there, it kind of really all depends on what Hitchens and Teofimo really decide to do, right, Joe?
Oh, it's also kind of funny too because if you look at Arnold Barboza and Jack Catterall, I'm looking
Yeah.
at their rankings here, and I don't see them in any other sanctioning bodies rankings unless I'm overlooking it.
Catterall is ranked number 7 by the WBA.
Oh, okay. So that's yeah. I don't see Barboza ranked by any of the
And
organizations. And I
Barboza
don't see
isn't ranked by anybody else other than the
and I don't see
WBO.
Catterall ranked by the WBC, and I
What about
also don't.
what about your fellow New Englander, the technician, Jermaine Ortiz? I mean, I'd like to see him in another big fight.
Yeah, yeah, and it's crazy because Jermaine Ortiz, after that close loss to Tio, I
Thought
actually
he
thought
beat Teo.
I thought he won that fight. He went way down in the IBF rankings to like number 14.
He's
Um,
number 15 under the WBA.
yeah, he's let me see the
I got
WBA.
another I got another name for you.
Yeah, he's 15 in the WBA, so he went way down, and it's crazy.
Recently signed to Eddie Hearn's Matchroom Sport. None other than the guy from Down Under. I'm talking, of course, about
Gamboa?
ferocious George Gambosis
Yeah,
Jr.
yeah,
Right? I
that's
would
not a bad
actually be
fight.
that would be a good fight with
And
him
it's a
and
good money
the
fight.
winner of this fight, right?
Yeah, because if you fight Cambosis in Australia, you get a nice payday, you get a nice turnout from the crowd. So that would be a good one too. Sure.
Right? Right? Or if you want to do another fight in the United States, again, Jose Carlos Ramirez is around. And
Another one.
let's
Yeah.
not forget that tonight we got another guy at 140 who's ranked, right? Oscar Duarte,
Yeah.
who was supposed to be taking on uh
Progress.
Regis Prograis, right?
Yeah.
So I mean, there are options for these guys. So Joe, who actually before we get to this, if you're watching live, hit the like button, hit the subscribe button. All right, and if you are on X, click the link in X because I'm stopping the X stream. All right, and we're just going to be on YouTube for the rest of the show. So go over, click the link there on the X, and yeah, Joe. So who is your trusted source for the betting odds? Because if you're the Beeb, you want to get value for your money, and value for your money depends on who's giving you the best odds. So who do
Yeah.
you like to use?
My advice to anyone, right, is download as many of these apps as you can, and if it's legal in your state, because it's legal in my state and it's legal in most states, but some states it's not. So if you're not forced to use an offshore betting account like some are, which is fine, you could still do that. If you wanted to use like Bet Online AG, an offshore one. But if you're able to use FanDuel and DraftKings, and there's also a one called ESPN Bet, but I tend to go back and forth between FanDuel and DraftKings. And certain events, DraftKings will have the better line, and sometimes FanDuel will have the better line, and sometimes DraftKings. Like for instance, you have a line on DraftKings where you can bet the exact outcome, meaning unanimous decision if you want, right? Whereas you can only bet like decision, where whether it be technical or otherwise, like it could be split majority. Like I said before, like you could just bet straight decision regardless of the way it comes to the decision. So with DraftKings, you were able to get the exact unanimous decision prop. So with this one, we're going to use DraftKings because we're getting the -110. Whereas if we had to do it on FanDuel, we'd have to put up -150. So why not save ourselves a little bit to get more of a return here? So that's the thing. But you got to be careful, and I'm pretty confident that this won't happen. But the caveat here is if one of the judges throws out a funny scorecard and decides we're going to make one judge says this fight's a draw when it's not, or one judge decides we're going to make it give Barboza the fight on one of the cards. Like there's always one crazy card, but even with that being said, I still don't think with the crazy card possibility, I don't think that crazy card is going to have Barboza as the winner. So that's why I feel pretty confident here, because the fight, like I said before, is in the UK. So I just don't think that that's going to be an issue. You may get 115 or 113 card when it should be 117 or 111, but that's still going to get us to victory. It doesn't matter. I don't think we're going to get a 114 card, or a 114-13, or a 115-113 card for Barboza here. So I'm pretty confident with the just straight unanimous decision. Okay, I don't think we're going to get a majority or a technical or a split. I think we're going to get the straight unanimous. So I like that. You get the precise exact outcome odds with DraftKings, and you're not getting that with the FanDuel. So we're going to go with DraftKings today, and hopefully you guys have that available in your area where you can go with DraftKings too, because that's the bet I'm recommending. Take the -110, straight unanimous decision.
Well, there you go. In case anybody is interested in some of these prop bets, Joe, are there any kind of wild prop bets that someone might want to, lay a little $5, $10 on? What are your thoughts? Maybe cat. Let's say you're really high on Catterall and think he can get a knockout. What are we looking at?
Uh, let's take a look at that, because I'm not even considering that. So let's just take a look and see what we get for Catterall with the knockout.
Or as Rocky here says, he says you can win a bigger price money if you bet for a split decision outcome, regardless of who wins. Interesting.
Yeah, but again, like the most probable outcome here, in my opinion, is going to be the unanimous decision. So
It's
let's
tough
look at.
to bet on a split decision too, isn't it? I mean, split decisions are probably
Yeah,
about as rare as draws,
yeah,
which are
they're probably rarer than draws. Well,
there are people out there that really like to just bet the draw.
yeah, Jesse Rican is a guy that bets the draw. So here's the fight outcomes. Like Jack Catterall by KO is a +500. So if you like Catterall, you think he could possibly get like a late TKO, then you could throw a small. If you're getting +500, if you want to throw $10 on that, just to have like a side bet, you want to hedge it, that's fine. It's not impossible, but I think it's improbable in my opinion. Like you can make an argument that because Catterall's such a clean puncher that he could bust up Barboza bad enough where he can get a stoppage on cuts. But again, neither one of these guys really bruise up and get battered in fights, and because they're not big punchers, I don't think that that's going to be the case here. Um, and the draw is a +1600. I don't think that's going to happen. If you really like Barboza, you can get him at a +300 by decision. But yeah, I like that bet that I have here. I like the exact bet. I like the the unanimous decision, the exact winning method, unanimous decision at the -110. I think that's the best bet. I if you you could play around with Catterall by KO if you think he can stop him late on cuts or something like that. Get a referee stoppage or a doctor stoppage late. You could put like a little, throw a little a little tickle on that. They do a little tickle bet like 5-10 bucks if you want, but I like the -110. I'm just gonna go with the -110.
Fair enough. And in terms of action in this fight, you expected more of an entertaining fight or more of kind of a kind of tactical fight? I'll tell you how I think it's gonna go personally, and then you tell me how you think it's gonna go. I think we're gonna see Arnold Barboza trying to apply pressure, maybe a feeling out round to start out the fight, and then him trying to apply pressure. Catterall boxing behind that jab, using his tricky angles and his feints, and walking Barboza into shots. Barboza not being, as we talked about earlier, as accurate, a little bit more sloppier with his work, and you know, I would say a less than thrilling 12-round unanimous decision. Jack Catterall, new WBO interim champion of the world. I'm not actually expecting a very thrilling or entertaining fight, but more of kind of a let's just say an aficionados kind of fight. The kind of fight that you're gonna watch on a Saturday afternoon here on the East Coast of the United States because you're a hardcore boxing fan more than you're really excited about this fight. Because I don't really think it's gonna be that exciting. I hope I'm wrong. Go for it.
Yeah, if you look at Catterall's last couple of performances, they've been better than his earlier ones. Like he's, I thought that the rematch with Josh Taylor, I thought that was a pretty entertaining fight. I thought the one with Prograis, like he stepped on the gas a little bit more in spurts. So he had his moments in that fight where he was really landing some good shots. There was some action packed moments, in spots, and I think this fight, honestly, will play out similar, but a little bit more decisive than the second Josh Taylor fight because I thought he won that fight pretty soundly. I think I had that fight. If I'm not, I think I had it like 8-4. I think I had it 8-4 ish, and I think this one will be like maybe a 9-3, 8-4 ish type fight. I think he'll win in a similar fashion, and I thought that fight was quite entertaining. It was more entertaining than I thought it would be, right? Because I think at some point I think Barboza is going to have to sell out in this fight and go for broke. Now, does that mean he's going to like stay in the pocket and be reckless? No, I just think he'll have to up the volume as the fight goes on because he'll be missing a lot, in my opinion. He won't be able to get those openings that he wants. So I think at some point he'll try to force the opening by just blanketing him with volume and hope that something's going to get through. And I think as a result of that, Catterall is going to have to react to that, and he's going to have some counter punching opportunities, and that's where he can kind of have Barboza fall into some of his traps because Catterall's not a bad counter puncher either. He can beat you going forward and going backwards. So I think this fight will have its moments. Is it going to be a Hagler Hearns? No, but I don't think it'll be a snoozer either. I think it'll be, like I said, similar to the rematch with Taylor, and I thought that fight was actually more entertaining than I anticipated it to be. So I was happy with that.
Yeah, I mean, look, Catterall's a southpaw. Um, he fights out of that southpaw stance. Sean McComb is a southpaw. And like I said, I can't erase that fight from my mind. I thought Sean McComb won that fight.
Yeah,
That
a
he
lot of
was.
people did.
I thought that he really got a bad decision in that fight. And to be quite honest, I don't see Catterall doing better against. Barboza doing better against uh, uh, Catterall than he did against Sean McComb. And
Now,
go ahead.
if you look at the average fan scorecard, because I love looking at these average fan scorecards on BoxRec, there was 74 people that scored that fight between Barboza and McComb, and they had the fight. It was a 10-round fight. They had it 99-91 from McComb. So they gave, I think, Barboza one round in that fight. The average fan scorecard. So he was really lucky to get the decision in that fight. I don't.
Really, bro, he outboxed him. Like
Yeah,
he gave him a boxing lesson out of
yeah.
that
I don't.
southpaw stance. I,
And
I encourage anyone with a couple hours. You don't need a couple hours, but we have plenty of time before this fight goes live, right? It's probably going to go live around 5 p.m. Eastern. If you haven't seen the fight yet, watch Arnold Barboza versus Sean McComb. I'm sure you can find it on YouTube. Again, it was on the undercard of Devin Haney's WBC 140 title defense against Orion Garcia, that infamous fight at the Barclays Center in Brooklyn. And rumor had it that Barboza was like the alternate opponent in case Ryan Garcia couldn't end up fighting that night. And that in the post fight, there were people talking about, well, he wasn't really motivated for Sean McComb, and he really was hoping to fight Devin Haney, and it looked like Ryan might not end up fighting, so he was kind of excited about fighting Haney for the WBC title and was a little underwhelmed in taking on Sean McComb. No, 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 no. Sean McComb outboxed him and should have earned the victory that night. And unfortunately, we haven't seen Sean McComb back in the ring. I don't know if it had to do with his support at the time of certain people in a certain part of the world that is very much in the news right now, but he was flying that flag high and even had it on his shorts out in Brooklyn. And, some people in Brooklyn really liked it, and other people in Brooklyn didn't really like it as much. I'm not going to say much more than that on it, but if you go back and watch this fight, you'll see exactly what I'm talking about.
it's
Um,
funny. It's funny too because when I
yeah,
said one of the fan scorecards only gave Barboza one round in that fight, the judge that did score against Barboza in that fight only gave Barboza 2 rounds, and that was probably the more realistic scorecard, the 98-92. I don't know how the other two judges gave him the win there, but they did. I
yeah,
and before we end this, I want to just go back to what Rocky Austin said about the split decision because I actually scrolled down a little deeper, and if you pick Jack Catterall to win by split decision, that's a plus 700. Wow! But
yeah.
here's the thing.
But I put a 10, put a little 10 quid or
Yeah,
15
but
bucks
let
on
me
that,
ask you
right, Joe?
this.
Just for fun.
Let me ask you an honest question.
Yeah,
If you wanted to hedge,
yeah,
what do you think is a more likely outcome? Obviously, the odds are telling you that the KO for Catterall is more likely than him winning by split decision. Because
yeah.
would you, if you wanted to do a small hedge, would you feel more comfortable throwing the 10 on Catterall to win by KO, or would you pick the split decision? I
Well, if
I
you're
don't know.
hedging your bets, don't you have to do two? So pick the two outcomes that you'd go for. The
No,
three the
I would.
three possibilities here are unanimous decision, knockout, right? And split decision that we're talking about. So if you're
Yeah,
hedging your bets, which two of the three do you go for?
I would say the knockout and the unanimous. I think the split is obviously the odds are telling you that too by giving you a plus 700. I mean I don't I'm not crazy about that bet. I mean, if you're going to hedge it with the unanimous, that's fine. But I think there's more of a likelihood of Catterall getting a late stoppage than winning by a split decision. I just don't think this fight's going to be that competitive, man. So I can't see I can't see the split decision here. I just can't.
Yeah, there
But
you go.
I don't hate it. If you want to do it, do it. But make sure you hedge it with the unanimous. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. So there you have it, guys. You've heard it from the Beeb himself. That was a preview of what's going to be taking place later today in England. We've got the interim WBO 140-pound championship, for whatever that's worth, taking place between Jack Catterall and Los Angeles, California's Arnold Barboza Jr. later today. This was a special edition of Sucker Punch, beating the odds with Beeb. Any last words, Joe?
No, I think we got another pretty decent weekend of fights, man.
There you go. Absolutely. We'll see you for hour number 2 on my channel. The link is there in the description box. So just go over and click the link in the description box for hour number 2 for Sucker Punch. We're going to be talking about Keyshawn Davis, right? We're going to be talking about Keyshawn's status right now as not just a fighter in the sport, but specifically where he stands in the lightweight division, especially after that dominant win last night at the Garden. I was there. All right. It was impressive to say the least. Keyshawn Davis absolutely destroyed Dennis Berinchyk. So we're going to be talking about that. Is he ready? All right. And we also saw David Morrell Jr. in his last fight take on David Benavidez. We've got a big fight taking place next year. Next week in Riyadh. And I think we're going to be talking about that fight too, Joe, in the week. All right. So stay tuned here
Yeah.
during the week for some breakdowns of that card. We could literally do a beating the odds
I was
with
just
Beeb
about to say I'm
on
gonna
each,
have I'm
on
gonna
each
have that
fight,
ready.
each fight on that card.
Yeah.
Uh, it, we could easily do that. But our number two is Keyshawn Davis, the new king, at least with the WBO title. Will he take over 135 pounds? We're going to be talking about his big win yesterday. We're going to be talking about, is he ready for the likes of Shakur, for the likes of Tank, and maybe even a Lomachenko, who's still out there holding a title belt. We'll talk about that next, guys. Link is in the description box. Make sure you hit the like button. If you're new to the channel, hit the subscribe button. And don't forget, all right, Super Bowl's done. Conference championships are over. Joe is back to the regularly scheduled time of 6 p.m. Eastern, 3 p.m. Pacific, 11 p.m. if you're out there in London, GMT time. All right, it's late night boxing talk for you guys. It's Joe, it's Eric, it's the flagship show on this channel, Ringside Reporter Live. Make sure you tune in. This was Beating the Odds with Beeb, and we'll see you guys for hour number 2, and of course, Sunday with Eric and Joe. Take care, everyone.